Let me introduce the candidates. They've written their own introductions, and some, if it's too long, I may do an edit on the fly. First candidate is Eleanor Bush. She's an attorney with 22 years of legal experience in child advocacy and government. She's held positions with Kids Voice, the American Bar Association Center on Children and the Law, the Juvenile Law Center, and Pennsylvania's statewide adoption and permanency network. Eleanor earned her undergraduate law and management degrees from Yale University. She lives in Squirrel Hill with her husband and 2 daughters. Next we have Mike Marmo. There we go. Judge Mike Marmo has been a judge since July of 2009. He serves in Family Division of the Court of Common Pleas. Mike is also a professor of law at Duquesne University. Mark Daffner. Mark Daffner is 42 years old, married, and lives in the South Hills with his wife and daughter. He's been practicing for over 17 years in the areas of criminal law, family law, federal tax, and commercial litigation, and is an instructor in the area of Pennsylvania trial practice. He's been selected as a Pennsylvania super lawyer, placing him among the top 5% of attorneys in Pennsylvania, and serves as an administrative judge in matters involving police discipline and employment issues. Mr. Daffner is also a member of the Democratic Committee and served on the 7th Ward Democratic Committee for 2 terms prior to relocating. Alex Bicket. Alex Bicket is a native of Cape Town, South Africa, and has lived in Pittsburgh for the past 29 years. He's been a trial lawyer for 23 years and has the highest rating to a common pleas court judge and a federal court judge, the only candidate to have this distinction from the Allegheny County Bar Association Judiciary Committee. Before graduating from law school at Duquesne University in 1988, Alex was a high school teacher for 7 years. As a trial lawyer for the past 22 years, Alex has tried over 40 cases to verdict in Western Pennsylvania, Ohio, and West Virginia, and has been a partner of his law firm for 15 years. And Leah Williams Duncan. Leah Williams Duncan has been a hearing officer in the Family Division for the past 10 years. Prior to that, she represented parents and children in dependency matters and represented adolescents in delinquency matters. She has served in her 2nd term as commissioner with the Pittsburgh Commission on Human Relations. She's a U.S. Army Reserve veteran, wife, mother of 4 children. Thank you all for coming. While most new judges are assigned to family court initially, what court would be your preference if you could choose? What specific professional and life background would make you a good fit for that court? Why don't we start there and move this way?
Okay, thank you. That's good. You start me off with an easy one. Okay, can I take it off? And I'm sick. I've been serving in the Family Division for 17 years, my entire career. As you heard in my introduction, I began my career as a parent advocate. I represented parents whose children were involved with Children, Youth, and Family Services, allegations of abuse and neglect. I also represented children who were being abused and neglected. And for the past 10 years, I've served as a hearing officer in the Family Division. It's the Family Division that brings me into this race at this time, because as you said, new judges typically come into the Family Division. And for the past 10 years, I've been watching judges come and go. And with the experience that I have, I'm already deciding over 1,200 cases per year. I'd like to step up and take a higher level of responsibility for the work that I've already been doing for the past 10 years. I have practiced criminal and civil law, and I think I would be successful in any division, but my heart is with the families of Allegheny County, and I'm glad to have that question because that's where I want to be, in the Family Division, and I would hope to stay there. Thank you.
I'm Alex Bicket. To answer that question, my background has been in civil litigation. I have had 23 years experience as a trial lawyer here in Allegheny County as a trial attorney representing corporations and individuals, both as plaintiffs and defendants. So my expertise and my experience has certainly been in the civil litigation area. However, I was a high school teacher for 7 years at Fox Chapel High School. Thoroughly enjoyed those days. Was Teacher of the Year in 1988 when I finished there. I would love to spend time in the Family Division. We do go there, I think, as a matter of default when we get elected, and I would certainly like to spend my time with the youth and deal with problems that I know exist. My experience at Fox Chapel High School has been that there are so many children out there, youngsters out there, that make poor decisions like most of us in our lives have done at certain stages, and who get involved in the criminal justice system and cannot get out of it. And I think that the criminal justice system and the juvenile justice system needs judges who will use their discretion, their compassion, their integrity, common sense, and bring to the table a deep understanding of the problems and the consequences that these youngsters have on their table if they're not dealt properly with at the juvenile justice system. Thank you.
I'm Mark Daffner, and my background has largely been in practice in the criminal division, in the family division. I've practiced in all of the areas of the court. One point I would like to make is that the current vacancy that exists, other than Judge Marmo's seat, is actually in the civil division because Judge Strasburger has gone to the Superior Court. Nobody is really sure whether that's going to ultimately create a vacancy in family or in criminal if a judge moves over. Now, you know, in my practice over 17 years, I've tried thousands of cases. My practice is not limited to Allegheny County. I go statewide. I've tried these cases in federal and state court, and I've sat as an administrative judge. I'm not really going to say a preference from one division over the other because I also teach law, and I teach trial practice. What I can say is that whatever division of the court I would be assigned to, I would strive to do my best to do it well and to stay in that division. I wouldn't be one of these judges that says, oh, you know, I have family division, I got to get out of here. If I was assigned to family, it would be my point to stay there and make that a better place. If I was assigned to criminal, the same thing. Or as the vacancy exists now in civil division as well.
Good evening, everyone. Anyone that seeks this position on Commonwealth Pleas Court must be able to serve in any division in the court. That goes with the territory. No judge has anything to do with where they go. The president judge makes that decision. It is sometimes, I think, difficult for people to understand is that the president judge is the administrator, and at this present time, Donna Jo McDaniel makes those decisions. No one really asks, although I was asked, which was, I think, unique, and I told her at the time when I got appointed, wherever she felt that I would do the most good. And I have practiced in every division, and if you want to seek this position, you're not going to know where you're going to end up at some point in time, so you must have the knowledge and experience to serve in all those divisions. My background was in terms of my practice. I did municipal estate work. I did a tremendous amount of real estate work as well, and small businesses. So I had an occasion to serve in every one of those divisions. So I like what I'm doing now. If I stay there, that's all well and good. I have no problem with it. But I'll be there for at least 2.5 years.
Good evening, everyone. As Jean said in her introduction, my entire legal career has been focused on serving children and families. I've done that in a number of different ways. I've represented individual children in foster care in court, making sure they have safe and permanent families. I've trained hundreds of lawyers, social workers, healthcare professionals, and legislators who work with the laws that affect children. I've advised state and local government agencies on how to serve children better, and I've listened to families, helped them understand their legal rights so they can advocate for themselves and their children. With that background, it is my goal to serve on our court's family division. That would be my dream, and I would come in well prepared and ready to serve. As has been said, we don't control where we go. If I were assigned to another division, I would come in well prepared as well. I would learn what I needed to do, and I would do a good job.
Thank you. Increasingly, the criminal justice system in the United States has become a place where you put poor people, people of color, and then have a situation where the prisons wind up being a place where people can work and a place where we warehouse people, and it becomes a huge burden on the taxpayer. Where do you see changes could occur within the criminal justice justice system to start to make this be a more equitable system and less likely to simply put certain people in jail? That's it.
Where I'd like to start with my comments on that question is with the juvenile justice system, which is where, unfortunately, some of our youth begin a path into the criminal justice system. So I think it's important that we all remember that the juvenile justice system has a preventive function as well. And when youth come into that system, they need to be held accountable for whatever misconduct they've engaged in, but they need an opportunity to start making some better choices for their future. So that's the first piece of the question, I think. In the second part, I am not an expert in the criminal justice system. As I've just said, my focus is youth and families. What I think is important and is something that already occurs in this county and should continue is a focus on problem-solving courts. So courts that focus on people with mental health issues, drug court, courts focused on problems that veterans have, and that's one of the ways that people can avoid being caught up in the criminal justice system for years and years and years.
Thank you. Judge Marmo.
Sure. Well, I see it firsthand, and I think that the court system is sort of a reflection of the socioeconomic conditions that exist in the country. And I think that you see firsthand in the family division, anyway, the kinds of problems that exist because of issues related to people's unfortunate stake in life in terms of them being in the poverty level in many instances. I really think that early care in terms of kids and education is probably the one thing that I think could help in many, many ways. And when you see that dollars are cut for fundamental care for kids, especially before school, preschool, I think that when a child gets to my point, when they're 12, 13 years old, unfortunately, in a lot of cases, their makeup has already been decided. And so I think one of the most important things is to try to provide, I think, something that would add to what we already have. And I realize there's budgetary cuts, but those issues that come up are ones I think that need the direct funding to help those kids in early childhood development, because I believe that'll create a better situation for the future. You're right about warehousing people. I think we have probably the largest population of people in jail right now, and obviously that's not a good way to maximize resources. It's some issue that we need to look at, and we need to come up with ways in which we can keep people in their environment. And I think that a lot of times, for example, you put people in jail for things that really and truthfully they could be on the monitor system at home, because we can't afford to keep warehousing people anyhow. It's just too expensive. Thank you.
Thanks. Well, I think we have really, I think the biggest problem with, the warehousing effect, so to speak, is actually public funding. We don't have very many programs in Allegheny County that would be of an alternative housing nature. We used to have, for example, I think it was 7 alternative housing facilities in our county. We now have 2. So there aren't that many options. If somebody goes on house arrest, you're waiting 3 or 4 months to get on a house arrest bracelet, and where they're waiting is in the Allegheny County Jail. I think probably the single biggest way to ameliorate the problem is to take a realistic look at these defendants. I mean, we're not talking about somebody who's 12 years old and needs therapy. We're talking about somebody who did commit a crime or was found guilty or pled guilty. Now the question is, what do we do? And one of the answers, and there's starting finally to be a movement toward this, is to recognize that a first-time nonviolent offender doesn't need to be hit with what are now unconstitutional mandatory minimum sentences. Well, maybe a criminal carrying a gun and shooting up a street gets probation. The federal government just reduced through the Fair Sentencing Act of 2010. I probably, since I'm timed, I shouldn't go into all of this, but they reduced the crack and cocaine, powder cocaine ratio from 100 to 1 to 18 to 1. People that were carrying 1 gram of crack used to be sentenced as if they had 100 grams of powder. Now they're sentenced as if they have 18. I have a case actually pending in the Third Circuit now because, you know, the biggest change we can make is to elect judges that recognize this. They're still sentencing as if it's 100 to 1 in some cases. And I'm about to run out of time, but, you know, this is a subject I could rant and rave on all night because I do deal with it directly, and I would deal with it from the bench as well.
I'll answer this question briefly. You know, as elected judges and elected public officials, we are public servants. You know, the word servant comes from the Latin verb servo, which means I protect. And I think that for judges, this is a huge issue that we need to understand when we're elected, that we're there to protect the folks of Allegheny County, if that's our jurisdiction, and to make absolutely sure that each and every person brought into the criminal justice system is given a fair hearing, is dealt with compassion, and is dealt with the discretion that is given each and every judge in the criminal justice system. And I think part of the problem that we have, certainly in this criminal justice system here in Allegheny County, is that some judges too often are quick to discard cases without giving defendants or people in front of them a fair time, a fair opportunity to be heard, to have their lawyers advocate for them, but much more important, to be able to use their discretion to administer a sentence, administer a resolution, administer some resolution to their problem that keeps them out of incarceration and puts them back into society under supervision. This only happens, I believe, if judges care about what they're doing, if judges have the understanding that everybody in front of them needs to be given the time, the opportunity, and the concern that we as public servants are obligated to do.
Thank you. First, I wanted to just echo and definitely support what Mr. Daffner said. Mandatory minimum sentences, I think, within the criminal justice system, that's where the majority of the problems start. As a judge, I would be, you know, very concerned with hearing each case and looking at each individual, applying the law as is appropriate to individual matters. I just think, I'm sorry, I believe mandatory minimum sentences have created a warehouse of people in the justice system that shouldn't be, and they need not be. I'm sorry. I'm sick here. Regarding our juveniles, I think there's an issue there with the probation officers and the other caseworkers who are placing our children. Statistics show that the young African-American men are placed at a rate much higher than their Caucasian counterparts, and I believe that's because of a lack of sensitivity and diversity training with the professionals who are dealing with these children. All too often it's believed that removing these children from their homes will be in their best interest, and that's not always the case. And even in the family division, I have written recommendations to sentence defendants to incarceration for not paying their child support. And that's just one remedy that's available to us. And unfortunately, on a $200 per month order, we're costing the state a lot more money than what we would get if these men and women were working, put into a work program and paying their support. We do place individuals in halfway houses or in the renewal centers programs such as that, and I think those programs are invaluable because they do allow for that deterrent effect, but also they give an opportunity for someone to be productive and to continue to work and to add to the problem, so to speak, rather than taking away from society. Thank you.
Thank you. At this time, we're going to start with Mr. Daffner and this will be familiar to all of you who were before the 14th Ward. One of the strange artifacts we have in Pennsylvania law and across the country is that women under the age of 18, regardless of whether they were impregnated by a family member or however, they choose to have an abortion either
No, there would be no reason. However you want to do it.
No.
There's no reason that I would be unable. And I guess it's the choice of words that's bothering me, unable or unwilling. As I stated in the 14th Ward, and let me just say for the record too, I don't dare second guess what Judge Ignelzi did. I sit in a courtroom every day and I make hard decisions. And I wasn't in his courtroom when that decision was made, so I'll just say that. But the reason stated for me to recuse myself from such hearings is that my standard of determining whether or not this young lady was mature enough to make that decision is so high that I don't know, and I'm a mother of 3 daughters, and it just scares me to think that one of my daughters could go and have this procedure without me knowing about it. But I can't think of a reason or circumstances under which a young lady who came in front of me for that procedure in my sight would be mature enough to make that decision, just basically because of the circumstances that bring her there in the first place. And having that, I know, to me, that is a bias. And if my standard is so high, I don't know, at this point, sitting here in this table without this young lady sitting in front of me, I don't know that anyone could meet it, then I believe that's a reason for me to recuse myself.
There's no reason why I would be unable to preside over a bypass hearing. As those occur, the first question for the judge is whether the young woman appearing in court is a mature minor. If the judge were to decide that the young woman was not a mature minor, then it would be up to the judge to determine whether terminating the pregnancy would be in that minor's best interests. And I believe that I would be capable of making both of those decisions and following the law.
I guess I'm the only one here that's actually had to do this, because I am a judge and I've presided over these type of cases. I can tell you that when you become a judge, in my opinion, you have to follow the law, irrespective of maybe what you believe your personal opinions are related to these issues. The thing that is crucial in terms of the bypass is that what is crucial in terms of the bypass is that a minor under the age of 18 cannot provide consent and does not have capacity under our state law to make contracts or be involved in anything where they can be sued or sue. So therefore, if they do not have their parents' consent, we have to make that decision. And obviously the first step in that two-pronged test is whether or not the person under 18 has the maturity and understands the nature of what they're involved in. And if not, if that not be the case, then whether or not this is the best interest for that person. So the answer is I've done them, and I think that I have no problem with doing them because I have done them.
I'd like to see a show of hands on this. Have you ever been endorsed, are seeking, or planning to seek the endorsement of people concerned with the unborn child in White County, southwestern Pennsylvania, or other anti-abortion group? If you have, please raise your hand.
I'm going to seek every one of them.
Okay, thank you. Chris?
Am I talking loud enough? I don't want Johnny to be talking. This question comes from the audience, and the basis of the question is a concern that speaks to family division through Oregon's Day. It's a concern that custody laws in the state in general, and judges in Allegheny County in particular, often give advantage to women in custody disputes or other domestic matters. The questioner notes that in January a new law went into effect that would rectify this situation to some extent, making it harder to move with children away from a non-custodial parent. It would give grandparents extra rights, and then penalize people who break custodial agreements or file bogus protection from abuse orders. The question is, how do you feel about these provisions, and if you were elected judge, would you use them to make the playing field more level in a big one, so, and that was the simple version.
With Judge Marmo and go this way.
Sure. Well, I think that I try in my court to try to balance it out even before this came into effect. I think socioeconomic conditions have changed. Years ago, men predominantly had the higher incomes, and that's changed. So I have been involved in cases where women had to provide the support for the children in light of the fact that they provided more income. So I don't think that we should go into this and looking at these matters in one way or another. Each one of them have certain facts that have to be weighed. About PFAs, I do PFAs. I can tell you that I think that it's that the pendulum at one time, as we're all aware, was such that it created a very bad environment for women, particularly, and that now, unfortunately, and I know this to be facts in terms of the way I see them in front of me, is they are abused in some respects. Not all the time, but lawyers use those sometimes to counsel their clients in terms of going on the offensive. And you'll have the clients come in and say, well, my lawyer told me to do this. I don't believe any responsible attorney would do that, because I think that it's important that people understand that those are very, very important things that deal with people's rights. And it can be up to 3 years, and if they have to garnish a weapon, they're not able to do that. So, long story short, I believe that irrespective of the new law, that judges in our division have worked hard to balance those things out and to look at each case individually and do what we believe is proper in terms of looking at these things in terms of support in custody. Your way.
I'm next. Okay, sorry. I think it's very important that every judge be a good listener who takes the time to hear all sides of a story. So part of the question was, are you pro-child? Are you pro one parent or another parent? It's the job of every judge to hear from everyone impartially and fairly, and that is what I would do. With respect to the new law itself, although I'm not sure it matters whether we think it's good or bad, since it is now the law, one of the things that the new law does is take a variety of factors that have been referred to in decisions from the courts of appeals over the years and put them into a list. So when you think about custody decisions and what serves a child's best interests, which is generally what the court needs to determine, there hasn't been a definition of best interests. There's now a list. Consider this factor, this factor, this factor, this factor. And that, I think, is useful to courts and to judges in helping guide a judge's use of his or her discretion. So, so I think I will leave it there, and the law is new, and we will all see how it plays out.
My courtroom is a very level playing field, but I won't kid you for 1 second. The family division, in my view, every day, remains a very sexist environment. I mean, in every administrative meeting that I sit in, defendants, men are regularly referred to as defendant. There is a tendency to forget that sometimes the women are the defendants. This is at a lower level. Our support system is a 3-tier system. The litigants have to go before a domestic relations officer before they come to a hearing officer, and I regularly review their recommendations and their notes and everything to make sure that there was no gender bias in their calculations. Typically there is. I think, and one of the things that I do is I go into communities in every agency that I can to try to educate men on presenting themselves in the family division, because so many men get off of the elevator on the 4th floor believing that they already have 2 strikes against them, and that tends to hinder them from presenting their case. I make sure that everyone who comes into my courtroom has their day in court, that everyone's heard on a level playing field, and that my decisions do not reflect gender, but they reflect what's in the best interest of the family as a whole. It if I make a decision that's in the best interest of a child, excuse me, it's also taking into consideration what's going to make that family a better unit, even though they're, you know, the family is separated at this point. And I think that's all.
Well, I think I agree with Eleanor. You know, the law is the law, and as I said in my previous answer, we as judges have extensive discretion to apply it based upon the facts of each case. And I think the issue is not whether or not you're pro-child or whether you're pro-grandparent or whether you're pro-whatever. The issue is whether or not, whether you as an individual who have an opinion one way or the other can leave that at the door, come into the courtroom, give whoever's in front of you an absolutely fair hearing, no matter what your position is on any of the subjects or any of the issues that have been brought up here tonight, and give a fair and honest assessment of the situation. We as judges, you know, when we're elected, we're there for life. And that's very different to electing a state representative or electing a state senator. After 2 or 4 years, if you don't like us, we're out. But as judges, we're there for life. After 10 years, it's a retention vote, and I don't believe that there's been anybody who has been ousted from the judiciary as a result of a retention vote. So what I'm saying is we all have opinions. Those opinions are irrelevant. The law is the law. You have to look at all of us and say, which one of these candidates or 2 of these candidates are going to be able to sit there, leave their opinions at the door, and give everybody, no matter what their position is, no matter what their creed, color, or race is, absolute attention, and give them the time to argue and to be able to put forth their issues in front of you.
Well, I don't think you can begin even to have a legitimate case without there being a level playing field, period. As Leah Duncan has pointed out, many of the lower level hearing officers do show a marked gender bias in family court. And lots of these cut against the father or the male and in favor of the mother, but it wouldn't matter if it was the other way around. You can't do anything without a level playing field. And what law you're talking about, if correct me if I'm wrong, is House Bill 1639, I believe, which really provides some more bite to level that playing field between custodial and non-custodial parents. It provides for enhanced penalties on falsely filed PFAs. And these are, you know, this is just a beginning. You know, the system is not perfect. It's never probably going to be perfect, you know, but it is a start. And in my courtroom, everybody is going to have their day in court. Every possible consideration will be taken, but it's going to be a level playing field.
So I love this question because somebody who's ever come with judicial raises, every time you ask a question that's too interesting, they just say, I can't answer that because it would affect my ability to be an impartial judge. This question is interesting. It's impossible for you not to answer, so don't try to weasel it. What is your favorite Supreme Court case? U.S. Supreme Court, I assume, both, right? Yeah, Jesus. All right, Alex, you're up.
Well, it goes back to my early law school days, and I'm not going to talk about Roe versus Wade or those types of cases, but the polygraph case to me was the most fascinating and the one that made the most sense to me, and the one that I can talk to anybody at any level about. Polygraph, if you're interested in me going into it for the 30 seconds that I have, is the case that determines, you know, what is foreseeable and what is not foreseeable. So this is about a lady who goes to a train station and a scale falls on her head from a train while she's running to catch it. And they sue the, I believe it was Long Island Railroad. And the question was it foreseeable that this woman would show up at the station, run to catch a train, and that a scale would fall off a roof and hit her on the head? So the whole issue was whether there was foreseeability and whether or not that was the proximate cause of the incident. So I think that's a fascinating case. I've been a civil litigator for 23 years, and I've always thought that that's a remarkable issue to deal with, and it involves every single case that I handle.
Which way?
Yeah, out this way. So Ms. Duncan, and then
I want to say this. I assure you all, and I promise you all that if I'm sick, I will not sit on the bench. I'll stay home. But I knew we were going to get this question, and I'm not weaseling out of it. I'll be cliche and say Brown versus the Board of Education, but the law changes all the time, and there's so many important cases out there. It really is impossible to say there's one case that's my favorite. I mean, the law is what we do. It's what we are, and I can't point to one case. Cliche, I did, but honestly, I can't point to one case and say this is the most important or this is my favorite. So that's my weasel.
I'll just do a straight out Brown versus Board of Education. In thinking about how important children are to me and education is to me, for me, that's the case that stood out most when the question was asked.
I agree. There's so many different cases that I think I could cite. Brown obviously has such a precedent in terms of our society. One of the things that I thought was interesting about going through law school was going through these exercises of reading these appellate court cases, and one of the interesting ones was by Justice Michael Musmano here, and it had to do with fun and frolic. And what this was about was an agency law principle that had to do with whether or not an individual was involved in a criminal act and whether or not the doctrine of respondeat superior would come into play. But the only reason I like that is because he was one of my heroes and I enjoyed reading his cases. But I think that I agree with Leah. There's so many different cases that have had an impact on the court, and this new Roberts Court is one that bothers me in many ways in terms of the way that's been interpreted and the Second Amendment and other issues that have come up.
Well, I probably deal with U.S. Supreme Court cases more than anybody else on the panel here, and there are so many that we deal with, but I'll tell you what, far and away, it's tough to pick a favorite, but I would say the Bruton case because that completely dismantled what prosecutors, all respects to Mr. Booth, used to do in picking juries and excluding jurors based on their race. We are now, again, since that case, we have moved toward, a fair proceeding in jury selection. I think we actually have that in Allegheny County. We have a very good jury selection procedure here, and we haven't had to make that challenge very often. So I would have to say that.
Originally? Yeah. I don't remember.
Let's start with Ms. Duncan.
Here's where we set ourselves apart, right? And I said earlier that we're at that stage of the game where everybody likes to say what makes them different, what makes them the top candidate, what sets them apart from everybody else. And I'm just going to put it on the table there because it's obvious what sets me apart from the rest of the group. And it's, obviously I'm tall. So, but no, seriously now, we can talk about the endorsements that we have and what we think we will do as a judge. But what I bring to you is what I've been doing for the last 10 years. And as a hearing officer even, I've been putting on the road for the last 10 years. My record for decisions is, I won't say impeccable. Well, on my side it is. But I have for 10 years made sound judgments. I've rendered sound decisions. I've run a fair courtroom. I've given everyone who's come into my courtroom a fair day in court. Not everyone who leaves my courtroom likes what I do. And it's hard to run, and I sympathize with Judge Marmo, actually, because it's hard to run when you're already sitting, especially in the family division, because half of the people who walk out of your courtroom do not like what you did. But when they walk out of my courtroom, they have had their day in court, they've been listened to, and they had a fair hearing. I commit to the families of Allegheny County. I commit to the courts of Allegheny County. I've committed to the citizens of Pittsburgh. I've worked hard to achieve what I've achieved. I've worked hard to gain what I have. I want to continue this service at a higher level, and I humbly ask you for your endorsement, and I humbly ask you to please ignore some of my ramblings tonight. I took a little bit too much cold medication. That's the last time I'm going to say that. But and these guys are really staying away from me. I would thank you for your endorsement, and I think the Allegheny County families would also appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you, and you're not the only one who's taking cold medication. I'm taking it, and Sam has fainted in the lab. So, Mr. Davis.
And I'm going to be taking it tomorrow. So the question is it foreseeable that I'm going to be sick? Thank you all for coming out tonight. It's a Saturday night, and there are lots more things that you could be doing than listening to 6 judicial candidates tell you why we should be endorsed by you tomorrow, and go on to 5 of us. But let me say that from my perspective, I come from a country that discriminated against folks of color for my entire life there, and I left that country for that reason, because I did not want to be part of that. I did not want to grow up in an environment and have my children grow up in an environment where that was the order of the day. And I, if elected, will bring to the bench a supreme understanding and awareness that absolutely everybody, no matter what their color, no matter what their creed, no matter what their religion is entitled to a fair hearing in my courtroom. Let me also say that out of all the candidates asking for your endorsement, I am the only candidate that has the highest recommendation from the Allegheny County Bar Association. Not just to be a judge at the local level on the Court of Common Pleas of Allegheny County, but also to be a federal court judge here in the Western District of Pennsylvania. What I would ask that you folks do, if you're interested, is to go to the Allegheny County Bar Association website and see what the Judiciary Committee of our professional organization means when they give the highly recommended rating to a candidate that goes before them for a judicial position. It's acba.org, I believe it is. It is a very clear explanation of what they think about the people that they're interviewing that they give that rating to. So I've been practicing law for 23 years. Nobody here has been a trial lawyer for longer than me. Nobody here has the higher recommendation than I do from the Bar Association. And I promise you that if I am elected, I will bring a fairness, a compassion, an understanding, an integrity, and a level of understanding for everybody, no matter what their creed and color is in front of me. And I thank you again for coming out tonight. Thanks.
Thanks. Among the various things that set me apart, since we're apparently on that line of thought, I'm the only candidate here that can vote for myself tomorrow, okay? I'm in my 4th term as a Democratic County committee man. I've been involved in Allegheny County Democratic politics for nearly 20 years. And I've been a chair, I've been a vice chair, I've been on the executive board of the party. I've done everything except been party chair. I don't want to be party chair. Please don't get any ideas about that. But, you know, it's so important to make sure that who we are electing are, in fact, Democrats. You know, make no mistake about it, our rights are under assault in this country. If any of you saw Rick Santorum's letter the other day, it was an email, you know, ranting and raving, but the GOP is intent on dismantling the Democratic Party. And what does that have to do with running for judge? I'll tell you what, it has everything to do with it, because when your rights are being trampled on, when, you know, and don't think it can't happen, when your phone's being tapped, when your mail's being read, when they're telling you how to live your life, where are you going to go? You're not going to go to the Supreme Court. You're going to go to our trial courts. And one thing I can guarantee you is if I'm elected, I'll bring our democratic values and our democratic principles to the bench with me. I'm not going to forget where I came from. I'm not going to forget the people that helped me get there. Now, I ran for this position in 2003 and 2005. I was not endorsed. And I jumped off the ticket. I supported our endorsed candidates. Some people think that's a good idea. Some people think that's a bad idea, but that's what I did. This year, I would like to be one of our candidates, and I'm asking respectfully for one of your 2 endorsement votes tomorrow. Thank you.
Thank you. I appreciate the opportunity to be here this evening. In my situation, I think it's pretty obvious that I'm the only one here that is a judge, and I think it makes a big difference in terms of your perspective as to what you would do if you became a judge, or what would you think and what would you do. I have a record. The questions that were brought out here this evening, obviously, I think shows that. I believe that I can make a fair and impartial decision on any case based on the law. When I said that I would go after any endorsement, I have. If I get a questionnaire from any group, I go and respectfully go through and answer it, because I think that's appropriate, because it's very important that you have an idea of where I am. Now, Allegheny County is one of those places where everybody knows everybody. So I just ask you, talk to one of your friends, talk to one of your family, and see whether or not they were satisfied with the way I treated people when they were in front of me. I give everybody, I think, a fair opportunity to say their piece. I'm respectful to everyone, and I make a decision based on the law as the facts are before me. I think that I have the experience, having been there and will be there for 2.5 years. I think that makes a big difference in terms of someone's perspective. I want to thank you all for being here. My wife will vote for me tomorrow, I can assure you that, Alex. I was a committee person for many, many years, and so I thank you for your time, and good evening, everyone.
As you've heard already, my goal is to serve on our court's family division. I'd like to share with you the vision of a family court judge I greatly admire, who's a family court judge in Fort Wayne, Indiana. He talks about family court as a place, of course, where the people who come in are generally people in crisis. And he looks at the court as a place that gives people an opportunity to change their lives for the better. He talks about his 3 most important values for his court system being accountability, empathy, and empowerment. The first time I heard him speak, I thought, that's what I would like to do too. If I'm elected and assigned to family division, that's the kind of vision I would bring, and I hope I earn your support.